Okay, let's see here. Took a little while to get me going there. Hey, I got a couple people here, looks like. We got 3. We can do a little better than 3, can't we? It did take a little while to get going, though. It has been a long day. And to show up this morning and that thing was canceled is crazy. If you guys can hear me, somebody type a comment. You should be able to comment anonymously if you don't want to say who you are. Can you hear me? Or am I just, I'm not going to read this thing out loud if nobody's. Three of you, but can any of you hear me? Can any of you type a comment over here and say that you can hear me? I need to know that you guys can hear me before I'm going to start reading this thing. Okay. Thank you. So it's working on Facebook. Anybody on YouTube? All right, I'm just going to start talking because I'm tired. I'm sure you are. Probably because it's 12:45 a.m. I just got this thing and it's been a long day. And I was just going to look at it for a little bit and hit the sack. But this stuff is so weird. I thought, you know what? Let's share a little bit of this. And I'm not going to broadcast it on the screen because although some of it is mostly redacted, the birth dates of the Vics are in it and some other stuff that I need to be real careful about. Completely careful about, but I can read it out loud. So I'm going to just get cracking on that. Thank you for joining us, Tanya. Oh, I'm sorry. Your name is visible, though, so I didn't mean to give you away, but this won't be recorded. All right, I have to bring up the document without showing you guys. Actually, I can show you a little bit of it here. Let's see. Present. Share screen. I'm going to bring it up real quick here. All right, that's that. You can see it there. And I'm just showing you that I'm not going to have these up because, like I said, it might give away some identities. But what I can do is I got a couple things ready that are pretty pertinent too. Let's try this one. Sexual harassment of students is prohibited. What a good idea. What a good idea. Who came up with that one, right? Try not to sexually harass the kids for once. They're not there for your enjoyment. Believe it or not. All right, let's get cracking. Okay, I'm just going to start reading this. All right. This is the report of Detective Kay Parnell, the Lake Stevens Police Department. She's a female officer, and she completed this on 1/25/23, which was Wednesday, I believe. Served the ticket on the violator, arrested his ass, booked him on the 6 counts that we've already talked about. I would have loved to have seen that. It doesn't seem like he was probably given a heads up. They probably just took his ass out of there. And then he was in jail for like 10 hours, so. Alrighty. You're going to get some advance notice on this. This is good gossip. Okay, here's how it starts. It should be noted that the following narrative describes crimes that were committed over a period of several months on multiple different occasions. While specific dates can be determined for certain events, that is not the case for all of the events. It is be determined through the course of this investigation that the crimes of assault in the 4th degree, sexual misconduct with a minor in the 2nd degree, and communication with a minor all occurred between September 1st, 2021 and January 21st, 2022. So that's 15 months there. It is likely that a majority of the criminal contact between the suspect and victims, which occurred repeatedly during the described time frame, occurred between 10/15/21 and 1/15/22. Now, I'm going to make sure I have notifications on here. So if you type something in here, I should hear the ding. And if you have a question, I'll stop. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. All right, so that's the little brief introduction from the detective. She gets right into it. Here is how this whole thing started. On June 15th, 2022, so last June, I, Detective Kristen Parnell, was assigned this case. I reviewed the referral from Child Protective Services. So there you go. Nobody called the cops on the guy. Nobody ratted him out. Nobody was tattling. Detective Kristen Parnell is notified by CPS. She learned that let's see, I do the math here. We'll call him victim 1, who was born in 2006. Yeah, so she was 16 or 15 at the time. Victim 1, 15, 16, disclosed during a therapy session that her former math teacher at Lake Stevens High School, Mark Hein, who's 55 years old, had been grooming her. Victim 1 told the therapist that Mark made comments to her that made her feel uncomfortable. Before we get too much further in this, let's remember that this is not somebody ratting somebody out. It's a confidential conversation between a child, a young woman, 16, and her therapist, just for the sole purposes of her therapy. So whatever she's saying is for an audience of 1, and you can really assign no intent to her because she has no idea that this person is going to communicate this stuff externally. Everybody still hear me okay? Okay. So she tells the therapist that Mark has been grooming her. She said Mark made comments to her that made her feel uncomfortable. She said that he made her sit next to him in class, touched her, and passed her handwritten notes during class. This is the 55-year-old we're talking about, the teacher. He made the girl sit next to him, he touched her, and he passed her handwritten notes during class asking for personal information, such as who her boy crush was. After getting that information, Mark also sought out the victim's boyfriend, the boy crush, and asked what the girl likes as his girlfriend. Likes. Like what she, and what the two of them do together. So he asks the boyfriend what the two of them do together. Mark also reportedly changed her grade from a D to an A, and this made the girl uncomfortable, and she asked why he did it. Mark replied, "Don't you need a better grade?" This is just, You got to imagine there's like 28 kids watching this too. And a little bit later, I noticed some of the commentary, like the kids are just like, this is really uncomfortable. What are we doing here? I thought we were here for school. Why is he doing that to her? Okay, so she seems like straight up, man. He gives her an A, and she's upset about that. Like I like her for that. That's honest. Okay, so changes her grade to an A. She asks why he did it, and he says, "Don't you need a better grade?" Okay, and this is what the therapist tells the police officer next, and probably why she was so urgent to pass this along, to take it out of the therapy and find some help. As a result of her encounters with Hein, 16-year-old victim 1 exhibits very extreme PTSD. It was later explained to me that the victim was diagnosed with psychogenic. I'm going to skip a couple words because they're pretty specific, and we'll just call it non-epileptic seizures that are trauma-related to the experience in her interactions with Mark Hein, and frequently has seizures when she talks or even thinks about anything related to him. Again, this is a therapist, a professional therapist, remarking this to a police officer. Again, not a kid making this up. This is the reports of a professional telling a police officer how impacted this poor girl is. And you notice they're not saying what the trauma or PTSD is from. And if I'm sure, like most of us, we've all been around victims, because men are just pieces of shit. And almost every woman has been through something horrible. And I know all the women that I've had significant relationships with, my ex-wife especially, had horrible traumatic experiences with men, sometimes that they didn't even remember fully, or that would, come back and haunt her at different times. She would have night terrors over things that people did to her when she was very young. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that the victim would be having these kind of reactions, but it makes you wonder what he did, because there's a good chance that you're not ever going to know a lot of the stuff that went on. So to recap, the therapist tells the cop that she's having seizures. She has them when she recalls her experiences with Mark, and that happens in front of the therapist. So as my investigation progressed, I learned of a second victim, another female of the same age range, I would say. And she was having similar complaints to those made by victim 1. I think the two girls are close enough together that we'll just call them victims. I don't want to separate them. It's not really that important, and I don't want to even edge towards anybody being able to ID anyone. So for our intents and purposes, the therapist just informs the cop that there's another girl involved. So continuing. The mom of one of the victims emailed me several images related to the mom sends the detective several pictures that Mark wrote to the victim, and emails exchanged between teacher Mark and 55 and victim 16. This is all through school. And pictures took of her, and pictures Mark took of her. The handwritten notes include a message from Mark to the 16-year-old in which one of them is apologizing for something and states, "I thought you and I were good." I'm guessing that's Mark. That's classic passive-aggressive guilt, right? "I thought you and I were good." Another with only one set of handwritten non sequitur response that says, "My dad is," and I'm not going to get specific here, but in a hospital and very ill. So "I thought you and I were good." And the girl responds with a very direct statement that, "Back off a little bit. My dad is going through this, and I'd rather be praying," is basically what she says. And again, very succinct, unemotional type writing. Here's another example of conversations between them that was provided to the police. "Mark, what's wrong today, my friend?" Victim, "Nothing. I'm just tired, but misspelled." And then she says, "Are there any games Wednesday?" Pivoting to sports on TV type conversation, or maybe sports on campus type conversation. Mark answers that question. She says, "Are there any games Wednesday?" And he says, "Who's your latest boy crush?" Now that little exchange isn't the worst. I mean, it's really creepy, but like for ones that are cited in a police report, I thought, I don't know. It's also bad that like if you micro look at them, I don't know. Okay. And then she gives the name. Whenever he asks her, who's your boy, she provides a name, and that's it. Okay, so moving on. In a child forensic interview conducted by a professional at Dawson's Place in Everett, the victim explained that the notes were always initiated by Mark, and the second set of handwriting with the short responses that appears on them is hers. During this interview, she explained that her first year at Lake Stevens, she met Mark through math class, but at that time he was also the coach of the boys' varsity basketball team and a Young Life group leader outside of school. Mark found out she was a cheerleader. Oh, shock. What a cliche this guy is, man. She was a competitive. Well, no. Sorry, I have to read it and edit some of this at the same time. She was initially assigned a seat in the middle, and he moved her to a seat in the front of the classroom directly in front of his desk. This was not a problem when she was first assigned to the seat, although it's probably a bit uncomfortable, right? But it became an issue when Mark rotated the seats for all the other children in the class, but kept her in the same spot directly in front of him all semester. She asked him if she could be moved and rotated because she didn't like how she stood out from the other kids, and he responded, "Just leave it. Don't you want to be next to me in case you need me?" This is his class. She doesn't sound like she needs his help. Continuing, a different date, Mark sent an email via GeoMail, which is the school's internal email system, apparently, to victim and another student, and said, "Hey, you two, just touching base to say I'm really enjoying you guys in class. You bring energy and effort. Looking forward to the year and getting to know you both better." Again, nothing wrong with that, I guess, overtly. Each class, Mark would typically teach his lesson and then hand out worksheets. So this seems slow to you. This is a long report, and she really sets the stage. So we'll do this in a couple of different settings, but I'm not going to really skip anything. So each class, Mark would teach his lesson, then hand out worksheets for the students to work on for the remainder of the class period. Once the worksheets were handed out, Mark made victim move from her assigned seat directly in front of his desk to another desk, which was located behind Mark's desk at the front of the classroom. Both Mark's large teacher desk and the second desk were then pushed together to face towards the other student desks every day after the initial period, so that she and Mark were sitting side by side facing the rest of the class. This made her feel uncomfortable. She said, "Yeah, no shit. Imagine that. You're sitting in your normal seats, and then the teacher pulls you out, shifts around his desk, and pulls another desk in alignment with his, facing the kids, so that you and him are sitting there, king and queen, facing your peers." Oh, man, mortifying. And so weird. Imagine if, the principal, looks in and sees that. It's is that not weird? How do you get, you just have to be in psychosis or just so used to doing whatever you want if you're doing that kind of shit to people's kids. Yeah, okay, you're not sitting in the rows anymore. You're going to come up and sit up here with me. We're going to face your classmates. We're going to do it every day right at this time. Man. So victim was getting, she was having stress reactions to this, basically. She was not looking forward to it every day and was getting more and more anxious. She had a hard time describing why it bothered her, and sometimes when she related it to other people, they told her to just toughen up or that it wasn't a big deal. She asked him this for the second time to let her sit in regular desks the whole period, and he said no, because in case you need help, I'll always be right here. And he patted to his right in the desk that was facing the rest there. She explained, victim explained she had discreetly taken the pictures to show to her mom without Mark realizing what she was doing. She wanted to better explain what was going on. One of the pictures provided to me, the detective, shows what appears to be a male sitting in a chair writing on a math worksheet, with the upper thigh and knee of someone wearing leggings sitting in a chair facing him. The male's right knee appears to be interspersed with the other person's left knee touching. No faces are visible in the pictures, but the victim identified Mark as the male and herself as the one wearing leggings. She stated that their proximity to each other and their body positions in this picture was typical of how they sat when she was required to sit behind him or next to him. If she moved her knee away from the inside of his legs, so they're like laced together, he would move himself closer in order to maintain physical contact with her. We get in the picture here, facing each other, pulls her closer. He's sitting like mansplaining style, right? Pulls her knee in between his thighs, and if she tries to move, pulls her tighter. This is in front of other students, and this is daily. She's 16, he's 55, and she's asked him not to do this. It's so... The Herald says he's exonerated, by the way, just so you know. This is all fine. It's not fine, by the way, and the district policy on sexual harassment and I forget their term, not fraternizing with students, but the way you interact with kids, this is not acceptable at all. It's far out of policy, and the district's investigation is still ongoing, according to what they said today. So, dude is not out of the woods in any sense, and I'll cover what happened today real briefly. We're not going to do a ton of this. I'll give you a little bit more, and then I'll give you a little rundown of what happened today and where things stand. And then if you have any questions, you can type them, and then I'll probably sign off after, I don't know, another page or two. We've done like 1/12 of this so far. Let's see. So if she tried to extricate herself from being intertwined with him, he would move her closer or pull her closer with the wheelchair so that their legs were always intertwined. While victim was sitting at the desk behind Mark would regularly rub her thigh. She demonstrated how he rubbed her thigh by rubbing her own thigh for the detective. So she places her open hand palm down on the top of her upper thigh, and she rubbed her hand along her thigh until her fingertips reached her knee, and then she rubbed her hand back up her thigh slowly to the approximate starting point, which was where? The top of the upper thigh. So I'm doing that to myself, right? Mid-thigh. The top of your upper thigh is near your hip, right? Think about that. So you rubbed her hand, let's see. So from the top of the upper thigh, so he put his hand up inside, like if she had a skirt on or whatever, and then all the way down to the knee, then back up. And continue rubbing it that way. Several times she was wearing a pair of jeans that were ripped on the thigh. When she wore those jeans, Mark would touch her bare skin in between the rips when he rubbed her thigh. Immediately before he touched her thigh, Mark would look around the classroom at the students during their classwork. Victim believes he was checking to make sure he would not be seen touching victim inside the rips for ripped jeans. When Mark touched victim's thigh, she would pull her leg away from him. She thinks she only told him firmly not to touch her just one time. When she did, Mark responded, "Why? I'm not doing anything wrong," and kept touching her. She said his response made her feel like she was crazy, so she did not want to keep telling him not to touch her after his reactions. Mark started rubbing her thigh about 2 weeks into that school year and continued throughout the rest of the time she was there. So he doesn't have consent. It's stated there. I mean, he didn't ever have consent, but she's stated. You can see like how even that right there alone, that's assault. That's assault for with a sexual purpose. Of course it is. She's a student. That's unwanted touching. The criminal stuff is pertinent and whatnot, but like from a baseline level, getting to see this, you get to judge somebody's character, and school, what is at the end of the day, other than it's where we send our kids when we go to work and we give them to people we trust to better them and educate them, most of all, bring them home safely. That's job one. And for too long, there's been incidents at Lake Stevens of men. It's always men, and it makes me embarrassed to be a man because there need to be a lot more good ones of us, and 98% need to be out of here. But the stuff that's happened before with Mattingly, the 20 years of him, and the stuff that happened with Garvey, not even counting his, you're talking about confirmed victims in the 30s, 30 or more confirmed victims, and each one of those is lives that are impacted, in some cases ruined, so some people in the Herald, they're pretty cavalier about just brushing this kind of stuff off. This isn't funny at all. And the line needs to be drawn at some point. I mean, you'd think that the lesson from Uvalde would be learned that if the administrators can't keep the wolves away, the parents will, and they should. Somebody should. All right. Sorry for the editorial. This stuff really bothers me, as you guys have probably noticed. Like, it's the hardest stuff for me to report on. I think it's super important, and I'm very excited when the story comes because I want to do it. I want to do a good job. But Mattingly was there when I was in school, and I tried to get rid of him, and I saw what he did to my classmates. And I've dated and married women who've been through traumatic mistreatment, like I stated, and the power dynamic of these big athletic men and the way that they use weaker people that are there for them to teach and to protect, and they use them for their sexual gratification in an atmosphere that is not just them using our kids for his gratification. In both Mattingly and Hein's case, and in case you guys missed it in my story, I grouped them together because they got hired on the same day for the same job. They were both hired as varsity basketball coaches in 2003 for Lake Stevens. And further, they played basketball together in college, and they were roommates in college. So Hein and Mattingly showed up together in 2003, and they've been doing a number on our students ever since. Mattingly left in 2016 with, I believe it was 8 or 9 confirmed sexual misconduct with students. And that's just the ones that they counted. They didn't even count the first 4 years. They didn't even count the ones that we reported. So imagine all the wreckage. And what I was saying is both of them have family at the school too. So Mattingly had his wife working at the school and later kids. And I believe that children go to the high school too. So the point being, as if it's not evil enough to destroy the innocence of the kids you're trusted with, ruining every important type of relationship that you have on earth and just shattering it. Imagine what that does to your wife and to your kids, and making them have to see it. It's almost like a hostage situation. It's why if I think about it too long, I start thinking about good and evil in the world and like what these things really mean, because it's almost like these people look for any way to destroy something good in any fashion. And I know that's melodramatic, but all right. We're going to do like one more anecdote, and then I'll give you a preview of what the other stuff is, because this is just going to ramp up from here. All right, so where we left it, let me make sure. I can't see the screen because I'm reading this. So what do we got here? Okay, 4 or 5 of you. So far, what are you guys thinking? What anybody want to share, like anything, the reaction that they're getting from this? And if you think that I'm overdoing it, you got to tell me. If we're kind of undecided, I'm just curious what people think of this stuff. So, all right, you don't need to say anything. We'll go a little more. Okay, so where we left it is she was demonstrating how he would wrap her leg every day in class from basically the hemline or just below the hip on the upper thigh down to her knee and back, and that when she would wear ripped jeans, he would massage her flesh in between the ripped parts of her jeans, and that he would look to make sure students weren't looking, and that made her super uncomfortable when he would do that. She definitively asked him to stop doing this, and he said no and kept doing it. And she said that made her feel crazy, that she couldn't get him to stop, and she chose not to continue to ask him. But she did definitely ask him. So, all right, let's see. So one of the pictures, we talked about that. While victim was sitting at the desk behind Mark C. Rubber. I read that. Okay. Made her feel crazy. Okay, here we go. More than one student in the class reached out to victim regarding Mark's interaction with her, as you'd imagine. One other student said to the victim that it was, quote, awkward to watch and made them uncomfortable, and remarked that they were worried about her. The other one also chimed in that it was awkward to watch and suggested she tell someone what was happening because, quote, it's not okay. And I'll just chime in there to anybody who is listening, and if you see something that's not okay, especially if it's students and if it's an adult or a person who is in a position of trust, you have all the permission you need to report that a person is abusing their trust with another student. You don't need to, rely on the victim to do it. You have permission to do that, and you don't need to worry about if you're right and wrong. All you have to do is report what you see and then get out of the way, and it's not on you if it turns out you're not ratting anybody out. You just give the information on, and it's not judgment, so you don't need to do anything other than realize that if you see something, you got to pass it along, because the person who it's happening to might not be able to communicate it as effectively as you could, so you could really help somebody out that way. Another student in the class, one whom is not friends with victim one. Okay, another student, not a friend of victim one, only knows them casually and didn't usually talk. Looked her up on Snapchat and sent her a message through Snapchat one day in class while she was sitting behind Mark, and the message says, "You look really uncomfortable. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you?" And then break your heart. The kid that doesn't hang out with her or know her, doesn't even have her contact information on IG or anything like that, has to find her on Snapchat, which is I'm sure you guys know, a platform where you are able to message somebody even if you're not, following them or pre-approved. So this person finds her on Snapchat because he's worried about her and says, or could be him, her, "You look really uncomfortable. Are you okay?" So we're seeing through everyone else's eyes. Obviously, this is super weird. Victim told the interviewer at Dawson's place that another student wrote her a note that began. Oh, sorry, no. This is Mark writing her note, an instance of Mark writing her a note. And class begins, and he writes her a folded note and passes it to her in plain view of the other students, which is normal. So he makes a big production out of it, That's an ownership type thing too, right? Like, I'm the alpha dog here. This is my girl. I'm going to pass her notes in front of you like I'm a student. And the note says, "What's wrong today, my friend?" The day after an uncomfortable incident between her and Mark. So, okay, that's how class starts the next day. The detective could tell these stories a little better somehow. So this one, something uncomfortable happens on day one. On day two, it starts off, she sits down and he makes a big production of handing her a folded note in front of the class that says, "What's wrong today, my friend?" The day after the incident between her and Mark, due to which she was avoiding talking to him or attempting to avoid talking to him during class, she said the students' bathroom privileges had been taken away at school due to a TikTok trend. So the school was only allowing students to use one bathroom on campus. During class, victim asked if she had time to go to the bathroom and return to class to get her things before class ended. The bell rang while victim was in the bathroom, and she immediately thought Mark had misled her about how much time she had, because Mark's sixth period was planning period, meaning he didn't have students and he would be in the classroom alone when she returned. So panicked, because she knows she has to come back from the bathroom into a classroom where it's just going to be her and him, and she was feeling tricked about that. Jeez. When she returned to the classroom, she saw someone else had packed her belongings back into her backpack. Mark had told her he'd done it to make it easier for her. She attempted to leave for next class, which was PE, but Mark told her to stay, offering to write her a note to get her out of PE. She said that she wanted to go to her next class, but he continued telling her to stay with him. During that interaction, the teacher from the class connected to Mark's room, entered Mark's room, and hearing Mark and the student's conversation, said, "Yeah, why don't you stay?" Mark then said, "Yeah, just stay. Like I said, this is weird." So the other teacher, the other teacher's name is written. I'm not going to say it because he's not subject of anything that I'm aware of yet. That's a weird interaction, though. We'll revisit that. Let me say that again. She is tricked a little bit about the time. So she goes to the bathroom, bell rings. There's this weird condition going on that it's one student per time in the bathroom. So therefore, she's kind of positioned into coming back into class after everyone else has left and only Mark is there. He's packed up her bag and gone onto the inside of it, at least as a favor to her. She starts to go. He says, stay. She says she wants to go to her next class. He says he's going to write her a note. He wants her to stay. She says she wants to go. The neighboring teacher comes to the door, overhears part of that, and says, why don't you just stay? Mark says, yeah, like I said, why don't you stay? Just stay. She was finally able to get away and went to the second part of PE. When she looked down inside her backpack, she noticed it contained a bunch of candy, Whoppers, Kit Kats, lollipops. The candies were not in her backpack when she left to use the bathroom, but she knew that Mark kept that same kind of candy in his desk. In a subsequent interview with the teacher's name redacted from neighboring classroom, he denied any recollection of this conversation taking place. Victim said the candy in Mark's desk was not for everyone, it was only for her. Victim knew the candy was only for her because each day at the beginning of class, Mark would approach her at the desk and ask if she wanted any of her candy. When she said yes, he would go to the drawer in his desk where she knew he kept the candy, discreetly place a piece of candy in his pocket, then sneak it under her desk so no one else would see. He did not do that to anyone else, and this production was noticed by plenty of people. The note Mark wrote the victim in which he apologized for something the victim explained was written to her the day she told Mark she was transferring out of his class. Good for her. Mark later asked the victim, is your mom mad at me? Am I going to be in trouble? What did I do? This is so fucked up. Do you know how much bravery it takes for, a 105-pound, 16-year-old girl to deal with these overbearing, 6'3", 195-pound, imposing men who know nothing about boundaries and are constantly hovering over you and doing whatever they want in your space? Like, it's not easy. She's super brave. And I'm not like super. Yeah, I admire her a lot. The third note Mark wrote to her the third note was the one where there's the conversation about a dad being sick. He responded, but Mark started talking about his dad and how his dad was sicker. Typical one. She said she was made uncomfortable because there was like one-upmanship and because she did not know Mark's father or understand Mark's need to share personal information with only her. Yeah, I can see that. It's kind of like he's having a marriage type relationship with her. Victim noted he could have shared the information about his father with the class if he wanted to, but in choosing only to share it with her, it conveyed a feeling to her that made her feel uncomfortable. She's very emotionally aware, and these are all, I don't know if they're techniques that a dude sits and plans out, but they're all fucked up, super fucked up. They show that there's a special relationship. Everybody who's sitting there watching gets the message, right? Oh, she gets to learn about his family. We're just regular scrubs, She gets candy. We're just not that. And she gets to sit in the queen's desk like it's a privilege. They all probably knew how unlucky she was. After passing that note to Mark continued to make, quote, puppy dog eyes at her during class as if he wanted her to show sympathy for him. Passive aggression, guilt, great weapons. With regards to the notes, victim said Mark would take out a piece of paper from his own notebook while he was teaching, write chit-chat with what? Mark would take out a piece of paper from his own notebook while he was teaching, write chit-chat or ask about boys. Then, as he was walking around the classroom, discreetly place the note on her desk so no other students would notice. If she did not immediately start writing a response on the note, Mark would point at it, indicating to her he wanted her to write something back to him. After she would write a response, Mark would walk by her desk again and discreetly pick up the note. discreetly, I bet. This whole charade's right in front of everybody. Remember, their desks are positioned next to each other in front, facing the class. It's like a two-person play. This would continue for as long as Mark wanted to maintain the conversation. Then when he was finished passing notes with her, Mark would pick up the note and keep it. Victim explained she was able to get pictures of the notes. She did because she was sometimes able to get her phone out quickly and snap a picture, and Mark was not looking. Good work. In addition to the handwritten notes Mark wrote to the victim during class, he also had a Google document he shared with her that he used to communicate with her. Any previous versions of the document are no longer available. Really? But the Lake Stevens School District provided me with the most recent version of the Google Doc in which Mark, the victim, had the following conversation. Mark, why does victim 2 hate me so much? Victim 1, she doesn't like math. She's frustrated that when she asks you for help, you do not help her, so she feels dumb. Mark, she often asks me right in the middle of me doing something else, starting something with the class. You think I want to help her? Victim, I will tell her to ask you when you aren't doing something else. Mark, tell her to be nice to me again. Victim, she said if you give her an A. I don't know if that's a joke or not. Just we know that he gave her an A. Wow. Her responses are like so indicative of like her trying to be a good, direct person. Like she doesn't put any extra anything. She knows that like how careful she has to be. Why does she hate me so much? She doesn't like math. Why is she just she's frustrated? I mean, this kid has to be like an adult maneuvering through a minefield at all times. It's supposed to be school for a 16-year-old. All right, let's see. I'm going to finish this page and take a break. We are on page 4 of about 22 of this narrative. So, okay, let's see here. In the Google document, Mark's comments appear in black font, while hers appear in purple. At the top of the above described Google document, before the above conversations, are the words rules, definitions, postulates, and properties from 1 to 2.5. Below that is "Oh, you dork" and a heart face scribble. And yeah, just written descriptions by the detective of nonsense words. Although she notes here that the less than 3 is commonly used to depict a heart in typed text and will often auto-format to heart when typed in applications or docs, such as text messaging. And she then attributes that Mark's typing to her, so he's giving her hearts now. When victim was in Mark's class, she was dating a boy. Oh, this should be interesting. See, all of this is news to me. It's kind of dramatic. Okay, well, you said you wrote something. That neighboring teacher needs to be made famous too. Scott Flanders denies it, says he doesn't remember it. And I'm not, something's off there. You're right. Okay, so this next section, we're going to learn that her boyfriend is going to try out for the basketball team. And I think that Mark's the coach of the basketball team. If you're writing a drama, high school nightmare drama, you can kind of predict how this goes, right? The basketball coach who's got the illegal and inappropriate crush on the cheerleader. He's going to make some object lessons out of the boyfriend, probably, right? All right. At the time, victim was in Mark's class. She was dating a boy who tried out for the school basketball team. Boy's initials are given. We're not going to get into that. During tryouts, Mark had approached him and asked how is X as a girlfriend? Yeah. Like, we're both dudes here, How is she? How is she, dude? The boyfriend is made extremely uncomfortable. He texts his girlfriend about it, explaining that it was extremely odd. he didn't have a frame of reference for how the guy would know him or know that they were together, I guess. And he has a hard time explaining how he feels about it. But he explains it to her, his girlfriend, in detail. The next day in class, Mark told the girl, the victim, that he had talked to, quote, your boyfriend. Mark then asked her, so what do you guys do together? She says, hang out. Mark then asked, what do you do when you're alone? Victim says, we hang out. Why does it matter? She's good. Mark said he was just wondering and then walked away. After that, he'd periodically ask how her and boyfriend were doing, if they were still dating, and what they did together when they were alone, expressing often that he wondered about it. When the two broke up, Mark repeatedly tried to get her to tell him why they broke up, but she wouldn't disclose any of that information other than to say it didn't work out. Listen to that loyalty. She is stand up, man. She knows the right way to respond to everything. She must have great parents. She's a good person, man. I'm super impressed. Actually, I'm not surprised. It's a side note, but one thing that I've noticed, I was gone for 6, 7, 8 years from here, and I covered football, when I was 2007, something like that. I was in my mid-20s and stuff. And I came back, first time I was around high school kids again was 2020, 2021, right in there. And, I'm from Lake Stevens graduate. And I've always liked Lake Stevens kids. I've been impressed with, the group as a whole and everything like that. But I was so blown away by the type of kids that are in school now. They're just quality. Like they're from 10th grade all the way through 12th grade. They're without exception polite, kind, mature. I mean, they seem super smart. And I mean, like the whole group of them. Like, yeah, if I go to a basketball game to cover it, you get the whole cross section. You get the band, you get the drum majors, you get cheerleaders, you get the kids that are doing the athletic training support, you get families and the younger sisters and brothers and stuff. And just like, I know it's just kind of a run of the mill type statement, but I just feel like there's a lot of quality individuals coming up through Lake Stevens right now, like more so than I've ever felt before. And I would say that about the football team. And when I look at a lot of other football teams, there's a lot of dipshits and miscreants and other teams. Like you could take the starting offensive line from the Vikings, and like each one of them would be fine as ASB president, or would be fine to, watch your nephew for an hour, or take care of your great grandma or whatever. You could trust them; they'd be fine. They'd also stop a fight if somebody was picking on somebody lesser, or they would step in, I think, if they saw this going on. I'd like to think so. Let's see. Mark was talking to her about the boyfriend, finds out they broke up. She refuses to give any information about their relationship, even though he presses. When the two broke up, Mark repeatedly tried to get her to talk about it multiple times. He wanted to know why it didn't work out. Mark then told her she was in luck because he could probably it says, because he could, quote, get you anyone you want, end quote, from the boys basketball team. Like she needs his help, right? Then he pulled up the roster. Oh, good. Pulled up the roster for the boys basketball team, which he coached, and said, pick a boy, which she refused to do. He pressed her again. Which one? When the first boyfriend was interviewed for the investigation, he confirmed that Mark initiated more than one conversation with him about his relationship with the victim and how they were a couple, including sometimes informally when there was an open gym. Knowing that victim was a cheerleader, Mark asked for dates and locations of events. She asked why did he want to know that stuff. He said it was so he would know when she was going to miss class. She didn't give him the information about her competitions or locations. She told him that she would email it to him ahead of time to notify him when she would be absent, if she was going to be absent. Boy, she is giving him all the signals of get the fuck off of me, and he just pushes back. Like it must be so smothering because you can do everything right and just politely, firmly protect yourself, stand up to this nonsense. And he just keeps coming back day after day after day. I can see why she'd be exhausted mentally. Mark also asked if he could attend one of her cheer competitions as a spectator. She lied to him, telling him spectators are not allowed because of COVID. We don't allow predators in, because of COVID. On another occasion, Mark tried to convince her to go to an overnight camp with him to Young Life. Good idea. What could go wrong? Wow. Wonder if Young Life really appreciates that notice there. That's just straight up trying to use it as a place to spirit off his targets. He's exonerated, though, so this is cool. She could not remember where the camp was, but it was somewhere in Washington State, several-hour drive from Lake Stevens. Mark told her he was running the camp that year. She said, "I'm not a churchgoer." He said, "It's okay, I'll keep you safe." "I'm not a churchgoer. It's okay, I'll keep you safe." Mark repeatedly emphasized the fact that it was an overnight camp. But this didn't change anything for her. She still refused to go. She told the Dawson's Place interviewer that she's always been a straight-A student, but in Mark's class, she was getting B's at best. At the beginning of the year, she received a D, but she didn't understand why it was not an F, because she'd only got one question right. When she talked to Mark about the grade, he suggested she come to his room after school to retake the test in order to improve her grade. After the retake, Victim's grade in the test was changed from a D to an A, even though she didn't earn an A, she felt, based on the number of problems she missed. She also watched Mark change her grade in Skyward, the school's online grading system, giving her good grades that she had not earned. For example, he gave her an A for a homework assignment that she didn't complete. When she told him that she had not done that assignment, he said, "I know, but don't you want the A?" Another time she received a C on one of her tests, but Mark recorded it as an A in the Skyward system. She said she did not retake that test, but Mark still changed it to an A. She approached Mark and told him that he had entered her grade incorrectly, and he responded, "Again, don't you want the A? Take my grades." Wow. What do you think? Should we stop there? Do you want where are we at? Yeah, I think we should stop there. Let me give you a little summary of what happened today, and then I'll tell you that we're like 1/4 through the narrative, maybe. I know we haven't hit the assaults or anything yet, but whew, I don't know, man. It's in some ways more insidious than I thought. And I don't know if you've read the Herald article yet, but it's just this horrible hit job that puts down the investigator from the police department, somewhat belittles our victims, not too much, makes it more about the police investigator. It opens with the author of the piece running a quote from the Mark Hein attorney in the subhead and the beginning of the story. The attorney declares that Mark is exonerated. I looked into who this author was. At the Herald, he's written 2 professional stories in his life. He's listed as a former intern, and he was writing for the Western Front a month ago, which is a college newspaper at Western. The Herald used to have this guy named Eric Stevick, who was a 30-year pro and was like the president of the National Education Reporters Association of America. Like he had a master's degree or like even more than that. He was the one who covered the school beat for them. And like the level of expertise you're supposed to have to deal with the layered coverage of a big school district because of all the, the thorny problems that reporting on kids and all that stuff take. That's the kind of guy that they would have on a team doing a story like this. Today they brought in a guy that no one had ever heard of, doesn't have any professional bylines, and have him write a story that begins by quoting the lawyer, clearing Mark of all wrongdoing, and then hammering on the detective. And I just want to say that my takeaway so far is this detective is doing an incredible job of describing the insidious nature of non-aggressive grooming or harassment or whatever you want to call it. It makes my skin crawl. I can totally imagine what it would be like to be thinking of having to go to class and dreading it, how she might ordinarily have a great day ahead of her, and that's what she should be, oh, getting ready for school, and then realize that, oh, in 45 minutes, I'm going to be sitting in the king queen desk facing the class, or facing him with his knee in between my legs and his hands inside my jeans again as everyone watches. I mean, it bothers me to hear that the teacher next door didn't help our victim, and that I don't blame kids for not doing more. It's tough, especially when Hein is kind of an alpha dude. He isn't as much as Mattingly was, but of course, he'd be intimidating to any young males who tried to. He would do his pissing on territory stuff. I'm sure of it. If any young males tried to intervene in any way, he would make an object lesson out of them, an example. And I just feel really bad for her. And I'll tell you guys this: it doesn't matter if the charges get reintroduced or not. This is out, right? Like, I've got it, and he's been charged as a 6-time. The charges labeled him a 6-time sex offender against children. That's what the accusation was, and those charges were dropped today, without warning, without any explanation. But you can't outrun that. That's in the internet forever. And his lawyer can yell that he's exonerated in the Herald, but I haven't even wrote about this yet, and I'm going to take my time and get it right. But between what he was labeled before and the fact that this is not helping him at all, and I did share it with, we'll just say somebody in his peer group, not mine, so somebody that we'll just say is of his type, we'll just say, maybe they coach and maybe they're a strong male, of his type. I mean, physically, I would not compare them to his character. I just mean, I wanted to see what another dude who might have a proclivity of, like, coaches kind of stick together type shit. So I like to run it by people. And I did a lot more of that at the beginning, because the last thing you want to do is give somebody a child molester jacket that doesn't deserve it. And I don't have a personal relationship or no. So I started at that point with, I went around to everybody that I had a good enough relationship with to say, hey, you work with this guy. I really need to know, if there's a reason that you think or you'd like to intercede on his behalf, or tell me, here's his real character. Everyone was just like spit on the ground, like look at the ground and just shake their head. Obviously, that one guy wasn't in the class, but yeah. So I guess the point that I was making is he'll never outrun that label. I don't think he's going to outrun the facts of this and the district investigation. They haven't had a lot of luck in getting rid of people in the past, but I think that as long as there's not some big turn in this, and as long as people don't, let this slide, they'll have to make a decision. And it's important that they be forced to make a decision, because years go by and bodies stack up. And I've seen it happen too many times before. It's super disturbing. And so my goal is I want to try and be real careful about this reporting. I'm not going to exaggerate it. I'll try not to make it as my stupid, witty jokes that I make when I get angry. I'll just try to keep it down the middle. But I'm going to do everything I can for the students who didn't deserve this. And that's all of them, but especially the victims, who not only did they not deserve it, they acted with so much dignity and strength and courage in the way that they've carried themselves so far in this story, that I'm blown away. So it's 1:42, so I think we'll stop for here. I will schedule a time again where we go through the rest of this. I'll be sure to give advance notice, and I'll also record the rest of it so nobody misses any. At some point, I'll make this ready so that you can all have a copy of it. This is a public record. They'd love to compartmentalize information and pretend like, oh, I'm a super journalist, so I get it, or I'm a cop, or it's public information. The only thing that needs to happen is redact, names that could get an underage person identified, and then I will make it available to back up a little bit. I got to make sure that there aren't any events in it that would be close enough that they could be identified right to the person. Those things aside, this is for everybody, and we'll read it in public, and we'll get it out in public because, yeah. So anyways, let's see. Where did things leave off today? So went in the morning to the court. There was supposed to be like 9 o'clock arraignment. Got there. There was nobody there. No arraignment of any kind. No scheduled anything. And they just told me, like, they recognized me because I've been in there a couple times. And they're like, oh, you, yeah. Yeah, it got canceled. What got canceled? The charges were dropped. What? Yep, here, we've got a piece of paper for you. They already had it for me. It was just a copy of the drop charges. And I said, well, then you talk to somebody. They said, no one's here to talk to. And I said, well, I got to talk to somebody. Like, why I need to find out why the charges were dropped. And they said, well, you need to talk to Lake Stevens. And I said, what do you mean? Lake Stevens is a city. Talk to the Lake Stevens prosecutor. I go, okay, who's that? And then this goes on. They're very passive aggressive, I guess is another way of saying they're just standoffish. They're not really helping me. I don't know why. But eventually they just gave me the number for some lawyer's office that is a private lawyer. And I guess Lake Stevens has a prosecutor that they subcontract with that works there. And I left a message, and they called me back at like 5 o'clock, which is also about the time I finally tracked down the LSPD. And neither the prosecutor or the LSPD would talk on the record about reasons why the case was dropped. They both stated that the case is under review, under investigation, and that they're working towards recharging. The police were a lot more firm in the way they said that they were dedicated to recharging. The prosecutor said the words of it, the tone and her voice wasn't the same. And I definitely, this is my own feeling and not a fact in any way. I detect some sort of vibe there between the prosecutor's office and the cops that something is off. And I think that either a mistake was made or they're acting like a mistake was made by the police. And you can just kind of tell in the tone and the glares and stuff, like, maybe they're saying the cops fucked up and stepped on their own case or whatever, but I feel like that there's some sort of something going on there. And I had a really tough time getting this documentation today. It should be a public record, and I already had the front page of it, which is the toughest part of getting these documents usually, because you got to know like a number, a code, or like the precise name of it. I didn't know any of that stuff, but I'd gotten part of it before, and they told me I'd come back and get the rest. And so I had that, and I came back to get the rest. They wouldn't give it to me at the court. They said that yes, they remembered me, and yes, they acknowledge I have my slip saying I should get it, but they say, well, since those charges were dismissed, we don't have a file anymore. I said, you got the files right there. They're like, yeah, but we don't own it anymore. And then I said, well, can I just have it? They're like, no. And I was like, all right, well, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, you have to go to Lake Stevens now because now they own the record again. And it's just pain in the ass shit like that. Like, it's just like, why? I don't know. But anyway, so I went there, and then they didn't want to give it to me either. They thought I was dicking around with them or something, or lying, or I don't know. I got a little frustrated and tried to make my case. I said, I'm trying to just get the facts that everyone else is getting. The Herald's got it. I should have it. I'm owed it. It's public, and I can't do my job. I can't report to our community if you don't give me this. Like, I've got 17 times the readers the Herald has right now, I think. I think they're down under 300 subscriptions. So there's just more people reading my site right now, our site. And so you're shutting them out if you're not giving me this information, and you're letting other people take it. And they just kind of sat on it. But what I think happened was the night started to go by, and the Herald piece went up, and that just hatchet job, where it was evident that they also had the charging documents and stuff. And my point was shown to be true, that like they had access and I didn't. And maybe I like to think that they didn't like what they saw from the Herald and thought that maybe they should make sure that everybody has a chance to write about it or get the word out. So anyways, that's where we left off with that. There is a little more documentation that's going to come in, and I'll have a piece up. Probably not going to write it tonight. I'm exhausted, but just a recap from today and what to expect going forward. And then we'll dive into these pieces one by one. Kind of, this story is going to play out from here. The police are going to do what they're going to do, either charge it or not charge it or sit on it. And either way, we'll continue to report on it. And then the school district, they have their investigation ongoing. That will come to a close at some point. And Mark remains on paid leave. Obviously, the more external pressure there is, the more parents who are upset about students being subjected to this, the more cover, assistance, that kind of stuff that people decide to line up in support of the victims, because they're being told to be quiet. By the way, I've been able to meet some of these people. They contacted me, and they're given the line that they need to be quiet because it'll affect the investigation or whatever. And pretty much everyone tells them that. And I just don't think that that's in their best interest, but they should do whatever they want. I think that institutional forces prefer to keep things silent because it then controls the external pressure. They don't want a mob of people telling them what to do. They prefer to do their own things and then reach whatever conclusion they want to reach. And, that could be good or bad. I think that the school district is going to conduct a good investigation. I think that they hire very capable people for doing that, and they will get through all this stuff. What will happen, though, is what actions will be taken when the rubber hits the road. Track record isn't good on that. So all reasons for the public to stay engaged, and I will do everything I can to keep the information coming and try and keep the bias and emotion out of my voice and writing, because like I said, it bothers me, and I don't understand why it doesn't bother people more, because it just seems to me that they have somehow taken out of the equation that with this one aside, if a student gets sexually abused just once, if just one student gets sexually abused by people trusted to take care of them, that's a tragedy. That's the worst possible outcome. It's a red alert fucking failure. People involved should be fired for one. And the way that it's treated now is like a rounding error. And I can't deal with that very well, because I think about how can they even justify that? Because if you think about any other part of day-to-day life, if that scenario happens, okay, I'm going to watch my nephew for a couple hours. Oh, sorry, brother. I turned my head and the neighbor, molested my nephew a couple times. It happens. No, that'd tear up a family. That'd be the end of that. I'd never be able to see my nephew again. The guy next door who did it would be missing. It would rip up everybody. There'd be no more Thanksgivings. It'd just be gone. If it happens at school, all right, that's only his 7th, so we can probably absorb a few more. And it's just part of this wider thing where they talk about making decisions in favor of caution and managing risk. And I want to scream, what risk are you fucking managing? The kids got assaulted. It's over. The risk you need to manage is how long you wait before you fire these people, or how long you're going to give these vampires access to the kids. It's not about your collective bargaining. Anyways, I said I was going to try not to get emotional. But anyways, let's call it a night. Is there anything that I can do for any of you? You know how to get a hold of me. Otherwise, DM at IG, DM on Twitter. And then my phone number. I take iMessage text whenever you want. I don't always answer the phone, but my phone number is 425-53-6762. I appreciate info, tips. You can just say hi. And if you are a subscriber to the paper, whether you're paid or free, thank you for that. And just be aware of the fact that you can get the Substack app on your phone, and you can use the chat feature, which is like a Slack feature inside Substack, where you can talk directly to me and get an instantaneous response, or talk to other people who subscribe. And sometimes they got good little debates and conversations going. People are pretty engaged in there, and it's not a ton of people, but it's a good group so far. And we're going to work on building off of that. And I think that's all I got for tonight. Thanks for joining in to read some of this with me. It does make me feel a little better to go over it, not by myself. So appreciate y'all. So I'm going to sign off unless there's anything else I can do for you guys. Look good. All right.